That was really cool. I like that opening. That was fun. Hi, friends. It's okay. It's okay to be tired. It's all right. I'm tired too. I was in Johannesburg day before yesterday, and I was there for a week, and I talked at the AI tour in Johannesburg, and I got to speak to a bunch of universities. I met with 4 different universities in South Africa, and we talked about AI and how they felt about it. And I just talked to Adam Kogan about AI and how he feels about it. And it's a really interesting contrast, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit because Adam doesn't mind. But the first thing I want to cover is the fact that I'm on this cool business trip where I went to Johannesburg and I spent a week there. And now I'm in London. And because I'm on an expense account, I ate at Nando's 9 times. 9 times in Johannesburg, and I've only been here a day, and I've had it twice. So lunch and dinner, which is just, because it's an expense account, it's effectively unlimited chicken. So basically, my boss is going to see on my expense report, Nando's, 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 McDonald's at the airport, Nando's, Nando's. So that's what you're paying for, and it makes me feel really excited, so that's pretty cool. I'm also trying to get like some kind of an influencer deal with Nando's. I'm feeling like there's some sauce in it for me, so just it's the Chipotle of the East. So that's making me very happy. Cool. So Microsoft wants to sell you AI, but I am not a salesman, and I'm also trying to push back against the broligarchy. I think there's just too many billionaires out there that are trying to burn things down, and I wanted to talk about that. So I want to offer a different perspective. I thought that this, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I do have this tweet that I thought was cool. Now, I've blocked that guy, and I've also blocked his reply, just because reasons. But I thought this was really cool. My guy Satya came out and said, it's not about hyping AI, it's about building useful actual things. And I think that there's just so many people out there that are just saying AI because it's fun to say AI, because it like has good mouth feel. They just like saying ChatGPT, and whether it be the tech journalists or the news people, and nobody actually understands what's going on, and they think it's intelligent, and they think it's going to kill us all. And ultimately, from my perspective, if it doesn't make people's lives better, then like, what are we freaking doing? What are we even doing? And I say that as someone who had a birthday last week, and I've been coding for money for 33 years, and I've been working on computers for 41 years, 42 years. So I was there when the internet was made, and I was there when the iPad got created, and now I'm here when AI is happening. So I've got this really interesting kind of historical context about what's going on. And it's kind of disappointing and shocking to me that we have the blueprint for how this stuff is supposed to work. Like, we've all watched Star Trek. Like, that's where we're supposed to have, right? I mean, the iPad didn't exist, and they had cool pads. And AI didn't exist, and they were brainstorming with computers to solve interesting problems to make people's lives happen. And it's 2025, and I still can't say tea Earl Grey hot and have it pop out of a wall. And and there's no jetpacks. It's all very, very disappointing. But with AI right now, these generative pre-trained transformers are getting everyone excited, and they're building things, and they're training things. And I wanted to kind of get back to basics and talk about it a little bit. And I wanted to put it in the context of how the folks in South Africa felt about what's going on in AI, which I think is probably different than what you're feeling and than what the conversation I just had with Adam just a moment ago. I met with a group of folks in South Africa at a place called Rethinking AI. And Rethinking AI is training kind of the next generation of African developer. And I spoke to basically hundreds of folks, 400, 500 developers. This is my Google Photos. I'm looking for the particular photo. And I wanted to understand what they felt about it and what they thought it was going to mean. And a lot of them said that they used it to cheat on their homework. And I think that's a fair and reasonable thing to say. So this is me talking to 400 developers at Rethinking AI, which is a really cool company. And what Rethinking AI does is they will hire developers ahead of time, and then they're paying the training company to train them. So you say, I'd like a developer, and then in 2 years, a developer pops out. And what's cool about that is rather than a code camp, where the developer pays the code camp and then in 2 years maybe has a job, They invert the problem. And a company says, we're going to need 10 more developers, 20 developers in a couple of years. We'll pay you ahead of time. They pay the young people. They teach them the skills that they want to learn. And then they send them off into the world, and they've got a job. Like, what a cool way to do it. They literally inverted the problem. But a lot of these folks are not growing up in a time like I have, where I could see over 40, 50 years what's been going on in tech. Instead, they know that somehow they can ask the world brain, the mother brain, they can ask the mother brain for an answer and say, how do I do a for loop in Python? And it pops out. And they are afraid. New developers, early in career developers, people who aren't techies think that the artificial intelligence is smarter than they are. And maybe this recording will go on YouTube and everyone will tell me in 10 years that I was wrong, but it's not smarter than us. It's artificial intelligence. Like, it's really cool when we see a parrot talk. How's it going, Adam Kogan? How you doing? Right? And why would the parrot talk like that? Because it's heard me yell at Adam over the many years, and the parrot just learns what it says, and it tries to predict the next thing that I'm going to say, and the parrot is a stochastic parrot. It is going to try to anticipate what I want. And that's why parrots speak English in the US, because parrots hear you yapping in English, and why parrots speak whatever language you speak in your house, and why it's so cool and creepy when they talk. But I'm not going to talk to a parrot about my problems, because it's just going to repeat what it's heard in the house. I'm effectively talking to myself if I'm talking to a parrot. Now, I realize that with AI, you could, and we could, get into the math. We could get into the master's degree, PhD level math, and talk about what it really is. And I understand that anecdotes are difficult. You don't want to ever say it's just. You don't ever want to do that with anyone's hard work. You don't want to take 50 years of data science and machine learning and say, oh, it's just spicy autocomplete. Oh, it's just a parrot. But the analogies are apt because they help us relate to it. And if you want to dig into the math and say, well, actually, Scott, it's not. Okay, I get it. But it's a way to explain to non-technical parent and non-technical CEO how things work. And it's also a way to frame how to think about these things. So the young people here in South Africa are afraid that it's going to take their jobs because they're being fed a narrative that it is smarter than they are. And I don't like that. I don't like that. It is a dystopian future. It's not the Star Trek future that I want. And maybe we are headed towards a dystopian future, and maybe AI is going to eat everything and kill us all. But I will continue to fight it because I want interesting and useful tools. The last time I was told that something was going to eat my brain and make me stupid was autocomplete. Does anyone remember that? Where you type object dot and then a method thing pops down and they go, it's going to rot your brain, young man. You got to remember those APIs. Get the book out and memorize that stuff. And then before that, when we got color. 1997, I was working at Nike on a big, giant terminal, talking to a big IBM DB2 backend, doing Unix, and we did everything in Vim and VI at the time, and it was all black and white, the way God intended. Right? And then when they said, oh, syntax highlighting, that's going to rot your brain, son. Knock that off. You got to do it hard way, right? Are you even really a computer programmer if you haven't taken a rock and flattened it and then infused it with lightning and made it think, right? I mean, come on. You gotta ask yourself, do you even code, bro? That's really stupid. They also told me that if I had a calculator, that I would also not know math. It's TikTok and Instagram Reels that are making us dumb. It's not, autocomplete and Microsoft Office, right? Those are the societal ills that I'm more concerned about, is the soulless hellscape that is Instagram Reels, and not whether or not a tool like Copilot is going to be able to make me a little smarter. So how do we change the narrative around AI and teach the young people that they can use this thing to make themselves smarter? And I think it comes down to whether or not you are curious or incurious. And this is concerning to me because I feel like the algorithm, the social media algorithm, is choosing to make people not curious anymore. And they stop asking questions. They see that a thing is declared, a declarative statement is made, and they say, well, that's true. I heard it on the internet. And they don't ask why. But today, at least for now, these models are trained on a corpus of information, and the corpus of information is the internet. And there's a lot of information on the internet that is in fact true. I would argue maybe 49% of the stuff on the internet is true. The other 49% is absolute trash. So we have to make sure that our models are biased towards reality and grounded in fact. And a curious person will be able to ask questions. And I think using the Socratic method and talking with your model is a good way to better understand AI. If you simply ask it for an answer and hope that that answer is correct, and it says an answer, and you go, oh, it must be true, that's not a good way to do it. But to interrogate it is more interesting. And I saw this wonderful tweet, because there's a lot of AI bros out there. And I use AI bro in a gender non-specific way. You could be an AI bro of any gender. So in this case here, this bro says, sometimes in the process of writing a good prompt, I end up solving my own problem without even needing to submit it. That they have discovered how to think. Because isn't that true, though? You're talking to the AI, you're vibing with the AI, and then you kind of work your problem out. This is called rubber ducking. Yeah? Have you rubber ducked before? You rubber ducked, Jimmy? Right? Rubber ducking is, and I've actually written a blog post about this, Hanselman, rubber ducking. This is why you blog, so that you can Google yourself later and then bring it up on stage at NDC. So rubber ducking is when you put a rubber duck on your monitor and you ask it and talk to it about how the code will work. It's just a metaphor, but this is why we solve problems, in the shower. You're just kind of talking to yourself, like, oh, how am I going to get that? Okay, oh, async, and then boom, and you solve the problem. Or you call Adam, and you're like, Adam, let me ask you this question, and I don't actually want his advice. I just want him to nod thoughtfully, and then I will eventually solve the problem, and then I'll say, oh my God, Adam, you're such a good friend. Thank you for listening to me. I'm using him as a sounding board. I'm rubber ducking with him. People are doing that kind of work with these models. And that's funny, and it's funny to tease these folks. But what they're really understanding is that they're talking to themselves, they're talking to a sock puppet, they're talking to their parrot, they're talking to a mirror to try to understand what it is they want the thing to do. And I think that that's actually useful to me, because once I realize that this model is not generating facts, it's just trying to finish my sentence. Like when someone interrupts you. Now, I've been married for 25 years this year. So I had my 51st birthday, and I've been married for, thank you, sir, 25 years. So my wife, I'm starting to realize, has a mental model of me that is built up over 25 years of my BS. So she has this mental model about what I'm going to say, right? I've been married so long that we finish each other's sandwiches, right? So it's you said sentences, I said sandwich. It's different for everybody, because the mental model she has of me and what I'm going to say is different than the mental model of you and I, because we've just met. And that's interesting, because she has context. She's got context. And if I say something, she's like, that story, I've heard it 15 times before. Google with Bing. I get it, Hanselman. You Google with Bing. It's hilarious. You've been saying that for a decade, right? Classic Hanselman, right? You all have a mental model of the stuff that I'm going to say, because you may have seen me on YouTube, or you may have been able to see me at NDC, and you go, oh, yeah, heard Hanselman say that before. Same old stuff. And whether it be me or Elmo on Twitter or whatever, you just we have these mental models of what people are going to say. And it gets you really in an interesting place, because it makes you wonder, am I really conscious? Or am I just saying the statistically most likely thing? Right? And then it's like, whoa. So I could go, let's talk about log probs. So this is the OpenAI classic GPT 3.5 turbo completions model, and this is being actually deprecated. This is one of my favorite demos, and I think it's a great way to show non-technical parent how to do AI and kind of how AI works. Now, keep in mind, when we say AI, it's the overarching thing that sits on top of machine learning and deep learning and data science, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about text completion, and we're talking about chat. But as a general rule, if you're explaining to non-technical parent how this stuff works, this is a good way to do it. Now, they're going to get rid of it in March, so that means my demo is going to go away. So that sucks. So instead, let's try to do our demo a different way. Now, I've got Ubuntu running, and I've got my machine running. This is a Windows machine, and I've got, here we go. This is a Python IPYMB, a notebook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to OpenAI, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to take the probabilities of each individual token, and I'm going to build up this array that describes not the text that it gives back. I'm going to ask it a question, it's going to give back text, but I'm going to say, hey, that token, that thing that you were about to say right there, go laterally and tell me all of the parallel universe stuff that you could have said, right? Because I want to know that you had something on the tip of your tongue, but you said sentences. You said sandwiches. Why did you say that thing versus the other thing? And then we'll give it a little bit of heat. We'll give it a little bit of weight. So we're going to show those probabilities, and then we're going to go and lighten them up based on how strongly you felt about doing that particular thing. Does that make sense? And this is all available. Like, there's nothing interesting here. I just think the problem is that we've given the mother brain a text box, and then text pops out. And then we just assume that that's the text. It must be the answer. So when you ask it a question, the thing comes back out, and there's no formatting. You know, like, it just spits out Markdown. I feel like adding a little heat to it would give us a sense of whether or not it's a good idea. So my favorite demo is, it's a lovely day, let's go to the. And this is a great thing to say, because what is the correct answer to it's a beautiful day, let's go to the? What's the right answer? The pub. See, the context. This is great. In this town, at this moment, at 9 in the morning, you know, if you're not day drinking, are you even coding, really, right? If this isn't going to drive you to drink, I don't know what will. But in Portland, in the context of Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, that's not going to happen. You're going to say beach or park. You're going to say Nando's. You know, there's different things that you could potentially say based on context. But we have no context here. We only have from scratch. We've woken up. We're a newly born baby with no context. It's a beautiful day. Let's go to the. So let's make a call. All right. Now look what we've done here. Park is 50% likely. Now, what do you think BE is the beginning of? Beach, exactly. Right, so there's a 30% chance that it was going to go and say beach. Pub was not in there. But let's say I'm in London and I've had a hard day. Let's see if we can get pub. I'm sorry. No. Okay, let's try to give it a little bit more. Complete this sentence. I like a good pint. I'm in London. I've had a hard day. It's a lovely day. Okay. Ah, yes. 95%. The only correct answer. Right? So this is really, really important. I really like this way of thinking about things, because there's a parallel universe at every token. There's a moment when it could have hung a left, it could have turned right. It said that there was a 0.11, there was a 0.1% that we weren't going to the pub, we were going to the park. But instead, we hung a left and we went directly to the pub, which is great. And we said, and unwind, but it could have said, go to the pub for something, something, and sit and have, or whatever. So you can see words like have a nice versus have a refreshing versus have a cold. Maybe they were having a hot chocolate here. I don't know. And you see this matrix of these logarithmic probabilities of what potentially the future that could have come. Now, when I asked a moment ago what the correct answer is, I used the word correct on purpose, because it depends. There is no correct answer. And this is the thing that we've got to teach people about. There is not the correct answer. There's just the statistically most likely one based on previous events. And this is the tough thing about creativity and about facts, is that if you're playing the market, if you're playing the stock market, they always say, well, you know, historical probability does not indicate future results. They always warn you that stuff that happened in the past is not guaranteed to happen in the future. And then what do? They take all the information from the past and they use it to predict the future. They literally tell you that there's no guarantee and they don't use any of this past stuff. And then they go and they use all that past stuff. So this is doing exactly that. And that's challenging because is it a fact maker or is it just a brainstormer? It is only as good as the context that you choose to give it. And it did not take very long for me to convince it was time to go to the pub. But what if, for example, this was a coffee shop chatbot, and I just wrote it for my coffee shop, and now I'm sending all my customers to the pub, right? That's going to ruin my business. So we have to realize that the context within which it exists matters. If I said I was in Portland, and I am a teetotaler, who doesn't know how to spell teetotal? It's one L, two L's? Who knows? Does it matter? We don't know. Right. And then at this point here, because I'm in Portland, I'm not going to the pub. It notices that I'm a teetotaler, and there's very little chance that it's going to drive me to drink. Coding it might drive me to drink, but it's unlikely that the AI will. So this bias that I'm applying to it is my own bias. And this is important because when you're talking to an AI and you're using something like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, we don't realize how important that initial prompt is and how significant those biases are. If I said, give me updated research on diabetes, or give me recent research on diabetes, just that word recent or updated is going to have a massive, massive change and effect on the bias of whether the system is. And I might not even know it. So then when we go back to this idea of the curious and the incurious, we find that people who are incurious are asking very simplistic prompts and expecting magic. While people who are very curious use the Socratic method, they chat with the thing, they challenge it, they brainstorm with it, they say, I don't think that's really true, or give me more about this, and they find a much better experience, which brings me back to this. So if we stop thinking about an artificial intelligence as a thing that thinks and start thinking about it as a brainstorming partner that has access to information that we don't have, then it starts becoming a more compelling tool, and I start realizing that it is, in fact, not a genius. If you hire a plumber, are you hiring the plumber or are you hiring the spanner? Right? And we keep thinking that we were hiring a smart spanner and a dumb plumber. I would much rather have a dumb spanner and a smart plumber, because that's what I'm paying him for. I'm paying him for his experience. So I start worrying about that in the future, about what happens when the AI starts training the AI on itself. And a lot of you may be old enough to remember what happens when you make a copy of a mixtape of your friend's mixtape for your girlfriend, and then you make another mixtape, and the audio quality kind of gets dodgy. Because you make copies of copies, or if you've seen a meme that's been saved as and saved av, or a JPEG that keeps getting saved as a JPEG, if people stop blogging, if humans stop writing about their context and their information, then that's going to become a problem, because then the gaping maw of the world AI is not going to have anything to consume, and we're going to stop being creative, and we're just going to generate pictures of hamsters inside of astronaut suits and think, oh, that's so clever. Look at me, I'm making art. Isn't that adorable? It's not. It sucks. Now, this is one way to look at this. This is this IPYMB. But another one that my friend Yanan made for me last night that I've been working on is this. This is another way to look at this. So here we're going to run a server. They're going to run this node server. And this node server is going to be sitting between us and OpenAI. So this is basically a proxy server. And we're going to do that same thing that we did in Python, except here we're going to do it in JavaScript. We're going to grab these log probs, these logarithmic probabilities that you get back from the API. And we're going to present it in a really nice way. So that's the server running on port 3000. Let's go ahead and run the front end on 3001. And we'll go like this. It's a beautiful day. Let's go to the... Now look at that. That's a really nice interface. This is a simple little app. And ironically, she used Anthropic Claude to write about 90% of it. Now, that doesn't mean that Anthropic Claude knows how to code, but it does mean that the idea of hovering over something and showing a pop-up and spinning through for loops is not rocket surgery, so it was a time saver for her. But you can see here that the interface now including heat makes for a much more compelling interface. Pause for effect. You can go back over here and you can see the tokens coming back and the probabilities, and then you can open up each of them and see what it's talking about and what it's thinking about. There we go. Look at this. So there you see where it's made a choice that was a 1 in 10 or less than 1 in 10 choice. And you don't know whether that choice affected everything that came after it. Like, it really seems harmless. It could have said sure, or it could have said absolutely, but it said certainly, which was a rare choice for whatever reason. And that could potentially have affected things later. And now we can go and see here, is it going to let me do sites? Looks like I've got an off by 1 error there. There it is. Sites appeared over on the other side. So there's another one where it picked a rare thing. So these are harmless decisions that it's making. Decisions, right? Rolling a d20 is not a decision, but let's call it a decision, right? It's basing it on previous thought, and it picks sites. And in this case here, though, doesn't it change your relationship with the text by having that red or that yellow to tell you that it made a decision that went in a different direction? It would change your confidence. So let's ask it something that's not an opinion. These are opinions, and this doesn't really matter. But there's a lot of red there, and it makes me kind of wonder. What's the... I'm not good with my hands. What's the capital of France? Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you. Okay. Pretty confident. Pretty confident. Could go either way at this point, right? Marseille. What's the capital of France? Ooh. Okay. But I'm shaking his confidence, baby. Could go either way, right? You don't know. You don't know. Pretty sure it's Marseille. Period. Adam Kogan said it was. $99.91, right? So this is OpenAI's O1, but it's good at being grounded in facts because it's been trained to be biased towards facts. But you can shake its confidence. And there are other models, earlier models, where you can shake their confidence even more. In this case here, we're doing this on what is it, 4.0. Let's go back up here, and we'll grab this chunk here. And let's switch back and try it on 3.5. Come on, computer. People are watching. The demos are live. Go down here. I'm going to turn on probabilities. We're going to hit this. Okay, now here it just gave 1 token because I need to tell it the maximum length. We'll do like 10 tokens. Boom. All right. Okay. Do you get it? Do you get it? Now, if you are a psycho and you talk in the mirror and you go, it's Marseille, and then you ask yourself in the mirror the capital of France, you'll probably convince yourself that it's Marseille. If you yell at someone, if you pound them on the head, we've all seen the CSI shows where they put a light on the person's face and they don't let them have Nando's and they go insane. Mumbai was a non-zero chance. The fact that Mumbai is even in the list As soon as it hit M, Marseille was coming. It was going to happen. And then Mumbai was not far behind. It's not a fact machine. It's only as good as your data. And that's why it's important to think about groundedness. And also what the response should be. Now, Google had a really interesting little snafu online recently where they have an image generator. And I personally don't use image generators. I don't think that they're for me. And I think it's important for us to vote with our feet ethically. Pick the part of the AI that you'll use. Don't use the one that you don't want to use. So I don't use image generation. But Google said, generate me a picture of the founding fathers of America. That's a reasonable thing. But Google also has a bias, an appropriate bias for diversity and inclusion and gender roles. If I said, Google, generate me a picture of 10 surgeons, I think we can all agree, unless we are assholes, that we'd like to see 50% men and 50% women, even though that may not be reality right now of the number of people that are surgeons. And if we started picking very small things like brain neurosurgeon, we might find that in reality, maybe it's 80 or 90% men. But we want to see, because we aspire to a Star Trek-like existence, we would like to see a mix of men and women. We would like to be able to go to the mall and see a nice group of folks that looks like the world, and we would like to generate a bunch of surgeons, and we would want to see surgeons that look like the world. We can agree that that is an aspirational, inclusive goal. But then when that goal goes against groundedness, which is show me a picture of the founding fathers, which was all just white dudes with white wigs on, and then Google generates an inclusive group of men and women of different colors and says that that's the founding fathers, people online go insane, and they go, blah, 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 the woke mob. And then they blame computers for it. These aren't computer problems. These aren't computer problems. These are ethical, interesting program manager problems. These are computer problems. It is reasonable and totally normal for us to want to generate future-looking, inclusive text and photographs. That's because we're not assholes. But to go and say, generate something that represents an actual historical fact, we want that to be grounded in reality. And then unfortunately, we pretend that it has a psyche, we pretend that it has mental health, and then we use the word hallucination and say, oh, well, it hallucinated that. No, it didn't. You gave it different instructions. You said, I want you to do this, and I want you to do that, and it did exactly what you asked it to do, right? You know how they always say the computer wrote, the code ran exactly as I wrote it, right? If there was a bug, it was very likely on me. The code typically runs the way that I wrote it. Now, I probably will screw this up because I always screw this joke up, but there was a thing that was like there's a programmer, and her husband says, go to the store and pick up some bread, and if they have eggs, get 12. And then the programmer comes back home with 12 loaves of bread, and her husband says, what did you do? And he says, well, they had eggs. Right? I did exactly what you asked me to do. Go to the store, get some bread. If they have eggs, get 12. And I got 12 loaves of bread because that's what you asked me to do. That's what's going on here. And we can nudge these things through either specificity or lack of specificity to get them to say what we want to say. So to tell yourself that that is a fact-generating machine that is grounded in reality is simply not true. So it's funny, when we say that when I started solving the problem, when I started thinking I solved the problem, the same thing happens when you look at something like GitHub Copilot, where you make the prompt so complicated and so detailed in English, you might as well just write the code. But it's also helpful to talk to the thing and vibe with the thing and use it as an opportunity to exercise your own brain. That has changed how I spend time with these things. Now, I want to come back to our friends in South Africa, because when I was saying that they were afraid that it was going to take their jobs, they're not joking. This is a thing that they're uncomfortable with, but they're also saying, well, if it's here, I'm going to use it. And the other thing that I was mentioning to Adam before was that, and again, we're just using South Africa as an example, but any place in the global south, anywhere that is developing, anywhere that doesn't have a gigabit directly into their brain, is going to have a different relationship with these AIs than we will. And that's why I think it's important to think about local and edge AIs a little bit more. When I was down there for a week. I ran out of data. I have unlimited data on a provider in the US called T-Mobile. But unlimited data is a lie, as we all know. I had 15 gigs. I burned through it in the first 5 days because TikTok, and then immediately got throttled. And in South Africa, people buy data and they top up their data. The idea of an unlimited phone is virtually unheard of. So you run out of minutes, you run out of data, and then you're stuck. And you can text or you can call, but at that point you're pretty much dead in the water. So first, the assumption of unlimited bandwidth and the assumption of a pipe that is huge enough to be going and having a chat. So while all the tech bros are having like full-on streaming conversations with ChatGPT, and other people are just struggling to text, shows you that there is a need for an AI that is not in the cloud. Additionally, there's fewer GPUs on the continent. So they would need to send their data all the way to Maryland or all the way to Europe. They also have load shedding, which is power that is being turned off neighborhood by neighborhood. And load shedding and power can be a problem. They've got water issues. So the idea that in order to ask a dumb question of an AI, burn down how many trees, pour how many liters of water onto a steaming rock to get an answer that is apparently the capital of France, is less attractive. So I think it's important to think about what we can do with smaller models. And I'm disappointed when I see people immediately doing all of their demos, all of their startups on what's called the best frontier model. A frontier model would be ChatGPT 4, 4.0, something like that, when you can get a perfectly cromulent result on a smaller, more portable model. So there's very large language models like 4.0 and 4.0, even 4.0 mini is a big model. Then you've got your older models like GPT-3 and 3.5, which may not have the same quality, but they use 100 or 1,000 times less power. And then you've got local custom models. Then you've also got to think about other biases that we don't think about. And this is important, because I gave Adam a hard time about, oh, well, they don't have the power, they don't have the bandwidth, but also only 1 in 10 South Africans speaks English at home. So then you've got a situation where the large language models are built on a corpus of information, which is the internet. And the internet is largely in English, and the internet that we can't see is in Chinese. And that's the languages. That's why these models are made in English. English, God help us, is not the language that we deserve. It's just the one we have, much like JavaScript, right? It's just the one that we have. It's the language that we all have to speak. And that's really interesting because there are people in South Africa that speak one of the 11 different local languages. And Pelanomi Moiloa, who is the CEO of Lelapa, said that when people call a call center and they're angry, people who are angry tend to switch to their original language. So the angrier you are, the more likely you are to speak the language that you grew up with. So she has a system that is trained on some of the 11 local languages that allows real-time translation between like Zulu and isiXhosa and different languages from South Africa that will allow someone who doesn't speak a language to work with someone over the phone who is upset because they don't have enough data or whatever. And their models are trained on the continent and they run locally. So the idea of a local model is really, really attractive to me. If we go over to here, and I'm going to open up LM Studio. LM Studio is one of my most favorite things ever. And I'm going to open up LM Studio, and then just to make the point, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say airplane mode. Okay, so we're in airplane mode. I'm not plugged in. Okay. And let us go to the chat interface, and we'll load up Llama. This is a smallish model, 3 billion parameters, but this is also a laptop. Okay, so we're going to load up this fella right here. It's thinking. And then I'm going to go over here and open up Task Manager, and I'm going to switch here, and I'm going to show you that this is not just a laptop, but it's an ARM-based laptop. It's a 12-core Snapdragon from Qualcomm. It's got a GPU, it's got a CPU, and then it's got one of these NPUs, these neural processing units. You know, you probably have one on your iPhone. You probably have one on your M1 Mac, and then this is a Windows machine with one as well. And I think is it 60 or 80 tops? It's a lot. Let's see what's going on. Oops, let's go away from there. Try that again. See if I have enough memory. Right here we can see that there's 16 gigs of shared memory, of which 0 is being used on this NPU. I don't care because we're in airplane mode. And we'll fire this fella up. We'll watch the amazing, how do we zoom in? Is it done? Did we make it? Did we load it? Are you there? Oh my goodness. Tell me a really long story about Adam Kogan and his love of Nando's. Where'd you go, friend? Tell me a really long story about Adam Kogan and his love of Nando's, period, and also his love of Scott Hanselman. Okay, so I want you to take a look at the CPU, which is not over 10%, and the NPU, which is doing all the work, and you can see that it was a 3 gig model that's been loaded into the NPU, and I'm in airplane mode. That's super interesting. Oh, wow. Adam had read every single one of Scott's blog posts and even attended some of Scott's speaking engagements. I think that Nando's does not actually have a nugget on the menu. They may have hallucinated that, right? It's not grounded in actual chicken, but this is actually shockingly correct about our love story, Adam, so I appreciate that. All right. All of that done entirely in airplane mode, and you can see immediately when it stopped working. That is a small model. The machine's fan did not turn on. It did a perfectly reasonable job right there. So something like text summarization or exploring data or even light RAG, retrieval augmented generation, can be done with a small model. This was Meta's open-weighted Llama 3.2. We've also got Phi 3, 3.5, and 4 from Microsoft that can run on these smaller devices. And I think that people don't realize that this is possible. They think that you have to go and send all of your data up somewhere. And this is a challenge because you want to think about data governance. If we go back to our South African friends, they're not going to want to take data from their company and their call center and then send it across the pond and into Maryland or wherever, some data center with a GPU, and then all the way back, especially when they're talking to a large model that's biased towards English anyway. So they're going to want to make a smaller model. Now, one time I was with my son in Finland, my 15-year-old at the time. He's a little older now. And we talked about the Finnish language. Any Finns here? Anyone Finnish? Finn? Okay, hopefully I won't offend you. But it is my understanding that the Finnish language is a very unusual language that doesn't really fit in any of the language roots. So like if you learn French or Spanish or Italian, you're effectively just speaking the same language with different hand gestures. But if you go to Finland, it's apparently just, they dropped straight from Mars. They don't know why they speak it that way. It's just an amazing language. It's its own thing. And we're in Finland and we're hanging out, and my 15-year-old says, with all due respect, sir, why do they bother? Finnish is not going to win. Don't be offended. The Finn can handle it. What's interesting about that, though, is it's a very reasonable question for a 15-year-old to ask, because for him, it's like, well, we should just speak English. Okay? But that's like saying, well, why are we coding anything but JavaScript? Right? JavaScript has been inflicted upon us. We should all just do that. You know, JavaScript has colonized everything and ruined it all. We should just dock JavaScript. But Finland has art and culture and novels and poetry and love letters and all these amazing things. So then that reset his understanding. That doesn't matter how many people speak that language, whether it's an indigenous language, one of the 11 languages of South Africa, or whether it's Finnish. It doesn't matter that the language is going to win. People enjoy it. People enjoy that culture, right? People who are coding in Erlang or something like that, it's not going to win. Erlang's not winning. But it's a great language and you enjoy it, so you should be able to do that. However, I was meeting with a gentleman from the University of Venda, which is in a kind of a remote area of South Africa, and they had implemented Copilot, and one of the languages that they teach there is called Tsonga, and Tsonga is a small language with a couple of million people. There's 8,000 million people on the planet, and this guy was upset that Copilot didn't speak Tsonga. But the question is, where would that data come from? Where would you pull that information from? There needs to be a corpus. Find me all the books. Find me all the poetry. Find me all the whatever. So we went together up to a website that you may be familiar called Hugging Face, which is a funny name, but it is what it is. Oh, I'm in airplane mode. Sorry. We got out of airplane mode, and we went to Hugging Face, and we searched for Tsonga, and we found, oops, that's DeepSeek. Man, they're really trying to. And we found a couple of languages, a couple of small models that were being trained. And you know where they got the most Tsonga-based languages? They got it on Twitter. Because people have to generate this stuff. So this is both good and bad. Because if you're trying to make a model that captures the Finnish culture and facts, but you can't find it because there's not enough information, or you're trying to use a language that is a minor language on the African continent, but there's no literature, there's no books, there's no way to do that, and then you train it on Twitter, which is not necessarily, yeah, what could go wrong? Exactly. Or Reddit. And that's a really challenging problem. So one of the things that I worry about around AI is this kind of snowball effect of bias towards English or bias towards Chinese or the top 10 languages, while other languages where we could be using a model to save that language, to help that language, we're instead pulling from user-generated content, which in this case here is ethically squishy at best, that we're going to Twitter and just sucking their tweets out. But then, how do you make ethically sourced, unusual language or minor language content? The way that the folks at Lelapa AI did was to do a call center in Zulu. They hired actors to make a call center, paid them a living wage, and then recorded thousands of hours of fake call center data. That's how you do ethically sourced data. That I think is a really interesting juxtaposition between sucking up text on the internet that you find. The other thing I wanted to show you was there's been a lot of talk about DeepSeek, which kind of came out and blew the internet up yesterday. And what I'm going to do is, in order to start it up, I think first I'm going to go into Windows Terminal, and I'm going to go like this. Because, what was it called? Retro, it was called, this is the shader, terminal shader, hang on, it'll be worth it. Terminal shaders, Windows, experimental pixel shader path. Experimental pixel shader path. D-whack, Windows terminal shaders. Let's put in double backslashes because computers are dumb. Retro.hlsl, comma. Failure. That did not work. Because it was in the wrong location. There, yes. There we go. Put a code the way God intended. Okay. So this is the 8 billion parameter model for DeepSeek. And DeepSeek got a lot of press a couple of days ago because they said that it was really cheap to train. And DeepSeek uses a concept called distillation, where rather than sucking in a bunch of data from elsewhere, they sucked in a bunch of data from very elsewhere, where they asked models to generate data. Now, rather than hiring people to work in a call center and paying them a living wage and then saying we're going to generate a lot of really great Zulu content, they went and they used OpenAI, told OpenAI to generate a bunch of data, and then they trained their stuff on that. So they made a mixtape. They held their tape recorder up to the radio, called the DJ, and then waited for their song to come on, and then hit record. That's kind of, do with that information as you will. That said, it does do some interesting things, and one of the things that I like is that you may know that it is, you will get a better response from an AI if you tell it to breathe and take a deep breath and chill out, and that it's doing a great job. Now, remember before when I said that it doesn't have a psyche and it doesn't have mental health, but you are nudging the vectors in word space in the niceness direction when you encourage it. You end up on the nice part of the internet. You're doing a great job. Take a deep breath. Think it out. Walk me through your thinking. And then the tokens it generates are I'm walking it through how I'm thinking, and that makes the likelihood of the next token to be more reasonable. Just like if I told you to take a deep breath and chill out and think about what the next thing that you're going to say is. And that keeps it away from like the mean people on Stack Overflow or the mean people on Reddit. So what this does is it thinks a little bit more. Tell me about Adam Kogan and Scott Hanselman. This is not on the internet. This is all local, to be clear. See, it says think. Okay, first I need to figure out who Adam Kogan and Scott Hanselman are. I'm not familiar with them, but they're probably involved in software development. First, Adam Kogan. He's an architect at Microsoft. Okay, so it's already hallucinated. There's Scott Hanselman. He sounds like a popular figure, too. I should think about their contributions. I wonder if they've presented at conferences. The response said Scott gave keynotes and spoke at Microsoft events. That's a big deal. Both seem to be involved in education. I should consider Scott's blog, prominent figures in .NET. That's kind of cool. And then it stops thinking. And then it answers the question. Now, even though it got you wrong, it's still cool because you're seeing its reasoning. And that's useful because, this is my opinion, that was probably my job. It was my job to give it that context. But it's kind of cool that we saw how it worked itself out, and these tokens at the beginning are arguably prompts that I could have given it that would then cause it to go off and answer stuff. Tell me about how awesome NDC conferences are. Think. All right. Someone mentioned that they're awesome. I don't know much more beyond that. I should figure out what NDC stands for. Maybe NDC is focused on .NET. No, they got off. Now they've made an assumption. It can't go to the internet, right? Networking. Maybe the N is for networking. I like that. That's kind of cool. Ooh, there you go. Are they known for inspiring developers? Putting it all together, I need to create a comprehensive overview of NDC. Nope. It's close, but you see how it works. So this is why you need to consider this as an enthusiastic intern. This is exactly what a 19-year-old with too much energy and too much caffeine would do. And that's great, because I love 19-year-olds with too much energy because they do all the work for me, and I get to take credit for their work. Just kidding. But what's cool about that is that I would check their work. I would say, this is close. You did a lot of great work here. I love what you're doing here. It doesn't actually stand for that. It was standard for Norwegian, and now we don't know what it stands for, right? I don't know. You ask Jacob. The point is, though, they got most of it right. Vibrant community engagement, impactful programs. Like, this is good. You saved me time. Thank you, enthusiastic intern. Okay? Again, all being done locally on this machine. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to say Olama serve. Oh, are we already on that port? Olama. Okay, so it says it's already listening on this port right here. Let's go see. Localhost. Beep boop bop boo. Okay. So here I just hit localhost, and I can see that Ollama is serving up both DeepSeek and Phi-3. So I'm simulating a local OpenAI endpoint. We are doing, again, all of this is not on the internet. We're doing this entirely locally. And then, through the magic and the wonder and the glory that is Steve Sanderson, we are going to fire up his smart components demo, which I think is really cool. Because, again, when we talk about what's interesting and what's useful in AI, I want delightful. I want things that are freaking delightful. And you know what's more delightful than filling out a form on the internet? So I've got a form here I've got to fill out with all this information. And someone gives me some unstructured text like this. Can I just copy that unstructured text and then not say paste, but say smart paste, and have it talk to the local AI, and then disassemble that text and reassemble it, and then deserialize it directly into this, this thing? Ooh, this is good. We got a bug. Retry failed, bearer token authentication. Oh, it's on the wrong port. Okay, quit Ollama. Bless you. Okay, I'm going to switch back over here. Okay, there's Ollama on, what port are we on now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Wrong port. Okay, so I am on, hang on, it'll be worth it. Don't worry. Steve is like, no, you're ruining everything. Or he's asleep. Could be either one. Okay. We're going to use Phi-3 latest. So we're saying, use this model here on that port. Okay? Pause for effect. I got 1 minute to stick the landing. Pressure's on. There's 50 browser tabs open, and it's totally fine. I have no idea what's happening. Just start over. There it is. 30 seconds. Mail address. Can I make Steve proud of me? Oh. Oh. No, don't applaud. It hasn't done anything yet. It's burning up the CPU. It's not on the... Oh, it worked. Yay! So stuff like that is delightful. Check out the work that Steve and the folks in the Intelligent Apps team are doing. There's going to be lots of demos like that throughout the day. I hope that this has given you another way to think about AI that is a little bit more grounded in reality and a little bit less BS. Yes, it is useful, but let's just take a chill pill and take this information out into the world and build applications that are delightful and do useful stuff. Thank you very much for your time.